This is episode 226 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. This week, I am very pleased to be joined by the governor, not that governor, but John Keisling, who made an appearance recently as New Mexico's governor, and Wally is going to play a very short video clip of his appearance as such.
You want to go outside? Don't be so deplorable and sour. Silly little children, you're so cute. You know why they gave me all this power? That's right, to keep you safe and sound, dears. Some may say that freedom's more important. Some just might get threatened with arrest. Mind like you should, for your own good. Governor knows best. Governor knows best.
All right. Well, more of that is available on John's YouTube channel. And welcome to Tipping Point, New Mexico, John.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here.
And before we get started, what is that YouTube channel if people want to see more of your work?
Okay, it's Math Poet, as in mathematics and poet, all one word, Math Poet 87 on YouTube. So yes, I hope that everybody will go check out the full video if you haven't seen it already, and I have several others as well.
And this is Governor Knows Best. It's not spelled full-on governor, but it's G-O-V apostrophe.
Exactly. And if you go there, it's the latest ones. If you get to the channel on YouTube, you'll see it.
Well, first and foremost, you look very nice in that wig, and people might not recognize you, but that was you starring in your own video. So
yes.
Kudos on that.
Thank you. I always do.
And what, aside from just being a frustrated New Mexican, gave you the idea of doing this particular video?
Well, first of all, I've always had interest in the arts and sciences. I've always, loved both sides of the fence. I'm a scientist by profession. That's what I do. But, as a hobby, I love the arts. And I've been writing and recording these music parody videos since, for about 8 years now. And mostly they just celebrate family because we have 4 little kids, and that's how it got started. But some friends of mine actually were the ones who came up with this idea. They said, we love Tangle. You could do Governor Knows Best instead of Mother Knows Best. And that just, that gave me the idea. And then I just thought, I have to do this because it's such a perfect way to express the way she's just, lording it over us, treating us like subjects instead of citizens. And I can't stand that. And so this was just my way of expressing it.
Well, that's really great. And of course, for folks who don't have kids, we both do. My three daughters do enjoy the Disney film Tangled, and that's a rich resource for folks making parody videos. They're widely popular, and this is a great scene in the movie. It's a modern animated movie where Rapunzel's mother does not want her to go out and experience the world around her, and she has this very scary to her, song intimidating her, trying to get her to not go out. So very, very relevant to this discussion. Mm-hmm. Do we have a Governor Knows Best 2.0? Because I have a bad feeling this isn't going to be going away anytime soon.
I know. I also have that same feeling, Paul. And so far, I haven't gotten inspired yet. But let's just say I still have the wig and some of the jewelry and the green screen. And so, if the inspiration comes, then I will listen to it.
How many hits do you have at this point? Do you even know?
Oh yeah, about 55,000 views.
Excellent.
This one has been incredible. Within the first day of posting it on Facebook, it had something like 11,000 views because people were just sharing it all over the place. I've heard from friends and people have sent it to them saying, "Oh, you've got to see this thing." And they say, "Oh yeah, I know that guy." So this is the first time anything like that has ever happened.
Yeah, no, I saw it on Facebook myself and thought, wow, this is really good. And then through connections, through friends, we were able to track you down, and all the better. Did you receive any film subsidies for this particular production?
Absolutely not. As I've said in the credits of some of my others, it said, filmed on location in New Mexico. The New Mexico State Film Office has no idea that we produced this. And that's how it is with this one.
Excellent. Well, maybe my eyesight, that's why I'm wearing the glasses, because I can't see the fine print, but perhaps I would have been able to look a little closer. So was this, go through the process, because, I'm not a very creative guy in that sense of the word. And, did you do this just in your home? Did you have an office that you went to? How long did it take? Were you able to belt this thing out in one cut?
Sure. Well, I mean, the first of course is getting the idea, and then you write the lyrics, and these, pretty much came fairly easily. But I always feel like there's so much that I want to express. There's so much I want to express. The idea of treating us like subjects instead of citizens. The idea that I'm constantly reminded of a C.S. Lewis quote, and I don't have it memorized, unfortunately, but where he said, he would rather be ruled, if he had to choose, he would rather be ruled by robber barons than by omnipotent moral busybodies. Because the thing about the robber baron is that his cupidity may at some point be satiated. His cruelty will sometimes sleep. But those who torment us for our own good will do it without end because they do it with the approval of their own conscience. So, I wanted to express a lot of that as much as I could, and just the general fear-mongering paranoia, the idea that you have to wear a mask if you're out on a hiking trail in the middle of nowhere, 100 yards from anybody else. It's just absolutely ludicrous. So, the lyrics, of course, come first, and then you record the song itself, and that took, that usually takes a couple of takes, but that's just with a home studio. It's amazing what you can do these days. And then, the shot list, the storyboard is what shots I want to get. And I had just gotten, for my birthday, a new green screen backdrop that I set up at home. And so with that, I had some friends who had the flags, the American flag and the New Mexico flag. So I went over there, got pictures of the flags, and green screen that into the background in two different places, and managed to find pictures of the things like the grocery stores, the schools, the hiking trails, the air. I actually set up, I had an old front door that looked kind of like a big desk. So I set it up across two sawhorses in this room where I have the green screen, and, ordered the wig and the blue jacket on Amazon, used my late mother's jewelry, and like I said, the wig, did a little makeup. I have stage makeup from the days when I used to do community theater.
Now, the governor, she often relies on phone books and other things to make herself taller. Did you do anything, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids style, to try to lean down and make yourself look smaller?
I actually did that. When I was sitting at the desk, I moved the picture in the background up, I believe, so it would look like the flags were, a bit higher. And then when I was standing there in the other shots, I actually was squatting down, trying to, look shorter relative to the door, relative to the mirror. So yeah, I did want to put that in there.
Wow. Well, just great stuff behind the scenes a little bit with the Governor Knows Best creator. And it's really exciting to hear somebody on the conservative side getting into the pop culture, doing it through a funny way, critiquing what the governor says, because, I could come up with 100 policy briefs, and, we've certainly come up with our own alternative plans for opening New Mexico and trying to do what we can to have an impact that way. Obviously, whatever it is not working with our governor. She has been empowered. She's got total control, and she shows no signs of losing that grip. But any organizations, you might be asked to do some performance or something, John. So
I'd be delighted.
Yeah. That would be a great opportunity for Republican Party, New Mexico Restaurant Association. We certainly have an in here in this particular studio. They've been doing some lawsuit filing, et cetera. But so you are politically on the conservative side. What have your more liberal or family members, people who maybe even aren't in New Mexico, like do you talk to them? Do you share what's going on in our state? And what do they see in terms of your appearance as the governor and the governor what you describe as her policies? Like, do they sympathize, or they just think you're just being mean?
Well, honestly, I haven't gotten very much feedback like that. I most of my family members, at least the immediate family, are conservative also, and so they're right on the same page with me. And the comments on YouTube have been overwhelmingly positive. There have been a few, but they've been very incoherent. And just I try to take a measured response and say, no, that's not true, that's not accurate, and here's why. But yeah, I haven't really discussed it with anybody on the liberal side, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty hard to come up with a coherent argument for, I think, what she's done so far. It's been so one-sided, one person handing down these dictates. Very, very frustrating. What do you do with your kids? You said you have 4 of them. I mean, that's obviously a very critical thing happening right now. Were you a homeschooler before? Are you a homeschooler now? Where do they go to school and that kind of thing?
They go to a private school, a Christian school, and we're extremely thankful that they are on board with what the UK is doing, with what the Europeans are doing, the Australians, about opening the schools. And so, to the extent that they can, since they're a private Christian institution, they're, I think they're not, the executive order doesn't cover them. They get to make their own decisions. And so they are, in school, full-time, in person, which is what, every New Mexico kid needs.
Yeah. Well, we are homeschooling our children now, our 3 kids. Well, one of them is too young. She's going to go to preschool physically.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, just the people who are talking about the opposite side of the equation in terms of the impact that it's having on children and, their lives and everything that they need to be a part of to be whole, well-rounded children and future adults. The governor's certainly not taking that into account. And, hopefully your critique, humorous as it may be, has a positive impact in that direction.
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope and pray for that.
So what other materials, what other kind of videos have you gotten into? Can you talk about those?
Sure. I've done 3 since the whole COVID panic started.
Very high productivity, I'm imagining, yeah.
Well, ironically, a lot of people ended up with more time on their hands during this. I've actually had less time because, of course, even the private school shut down in March. And so we were doing, remote learning as best we could. And the teachers did a heroic job, but it was still hard on my wife. So I felt like I wanted to take some of the burden off her. So, yeah, and my job was not affected. So I was still going to work every day. But like I said, before that, they were all about celebrating having babies and kids and family. The first one I ever did was, if you remember the Black Eyed Peas, My Humps, back in the day. My first one was my bump when my wife was pregnant with her first child.
So totally family-related stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You haven't done any satire or any of that stuff before. This was first foray.
This was a first. Yeah, now I've written satire before. I went to grad school at the University of Arizona, and I wrote for the school newspaper, the Daily Wildcat there, and had a weekly column there for a while from the conservative point of view. And I did quite a bit of satire because I love it. It's such a great way to, make a point and skewer things and people that just desperately need it. And but no, I hadn't been inspired to write parody music videos on those themes, until, like I said, somebody suggested this. So I have 3 about the coronavirus. The first one's a takeoff of My Sharona called Die Corona, and I really put a lot of effort into that one, and the kids are in it. And then there was a couple that just hit me for REM's Stand. I did Stand in the Place Where You Are. I did Stay in the Place Where You Live, about the the whole so-called quarantine thing. And then, the other one was when Walmart put the signs on the floor that said, "Shop this way." The first thing I thought of was Run DMC and Aerosmith, "Walk This Way." So I did a Shop This Way parody of that. And that's the next to most recent one before Governor Knows Best came out.
Right. Well, so you're on YouTube. Do you have a Twitter handle or Facebook? If people want to share ideas with you, are you accepting those?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. You can share in the comments on YouTube. I do have a Facebook page at Math Poet 87's parody music videos. that, you should be able to find that if you search on Facebook. I only just set that up a couple of months ago.
Wow. Well, it's a pleasure and honor to get to know you a little bit and to hear about some of these, very exciting ways to fight back. And definitely my mind is already turning here, because definitely one of the things that we're missing on the more conservative side is ways to engage in these approaches to critique. Wally's got another one queued up.
Go ahead, ignore the latest science. Go ahead, say science disagrees. You might have to close and lose your clients, but we just can't take any chances. Such responsibility I carry, such a heavy burden on my chest. Still I endure, because I'm sure Governor knows best. Governor knows best. Computer models don't lie on your own.
So we're going to have one of your other works of art here lined up as soon as we get that. Why don't you try the stand this way? Is it?
Stand, stay in the place where you live.
Stay in the place where you live.
Yeah,
little
we can do that
REM
one.
action. And now copyright is not a problem as long as you're doing total.
It's not, because there's an entire section of the copyright law called the fair use, which explicitly covers parody.
Excellent.
So, if someone has come out with any kind of art form and you want to make a satire or a parody of it, you are explicitly covered under fair use. And I don't monetize the videos either. I wouldn't feel right about trying to make any money off of it. Several of them actually are monetized, but not by me. The copyright owners of the original song find them through some sort of automation, I'm sure, and then they will sometimes monetize it. So some of them do play ads in front of them. Yes, here comes the REM one.
Stay in the place where you live. Don't go out. Think about infection. You don't want that virus in you. Stay in the place where you live. If you can. Think about contagion. You don't want to spread that virus around. If the quarantine gets on your nerves, think how it's helping to flatten the curve. Your kids are going to be in your hair. The toys are going to be everywhere. But stay in the place where you live. Work from home. Think about instruction. Wonder how this Google Classroom thing works. Stay in the place
Very
where
nice,
you
very
live.
relevant, very catchy tune
Think
there.
about
I'm quite impressed with your songwriting, or I don't know what they call that, parody songwriting, I guess. The Weird Al of New Mexico.
Oh, there's no greater accolade than that, my friend.
Hey, I as the parent of small children, "Eat It" has become an anthem at my house, because getting kids to eat their food on the plate is always a challenge.
Oh, yes. What's funny, I look back at how much has changed, even since then. I mean, originally, when they said, okay, 14 days to flatten the curve, and we didn't know quite what this virus was going to do, and we were concerned about, hospitalization and PPE and ventilators and all that, I was fine with that. Okay, 14 days to flatten the curve. We'll stay home. We won't go anywhere. We'll do our part. And then, okay, another 2 weeks, maybe, yeah, that was fine too. But then they kept moving the goalpost. Suddenly it wasn't trying to just slow it down for a couple of weeks. Then, oh no, we got to stay locked down. Like I think the mayor of LA said, oh, we're going to stay locked down until there's a vaccine or until there's a cure or something like that. So yeah, I was on board with it then, and that's one thing I was just trying to express in that song. But even there, I go on to point out that something that was bothering me then was people thinking that you couldn't even go outside. Every time you set foot outside your house, you're risking, the lives of your fellow Mexicans. I think the governor came out with that statement that every time you step outside your home, you are, risking putting the lives of your fellow New Mexicans at risk. I literally stepped outside my house and shouted, "I'm outside! I'm not endangering anybody. Here I am, outside." And so I said, no, this is not some kind of radioactive fallout that gets on everything, and so if you go outside, you're going to catch it and die. No, get out, get fresh air, hike. So...
Yeah, the Sunday newspaper just to your point, the the real governor of New Mexico, I've highlighted a few points that we're going to be talking about later on. She said, "We're in this fight until there's an effective and widely accessible vaccine for COVID-19. There's no finish line, not till then," which
Wow.
kind of reflects exactly what you're saying.
Yep.
And one of the weird things that she's kind of concluding on, we can reduce opportunities for the virus to spread, and we have, but we cannot eliminate them entirely. Now, that's almost taking a more realistic approach, but her policy and personal approach is much more towards what you're reflecting in the video, what we've said online and in numerous articles and on this podcast, is that she is going to be using this power for a very long time. And unless the legislature sticks its neck out or changes this fall in a way that is remarkable, there's nothing to stop her.
Well, I hate to admit it, but I think you're right. I attended that freedom rally that was back in July, I think it was, in Albuquerque, and several people spoke. One of them was David Chavez. Yes, David Chavez.
Mm-hmm.
He's a lawyer. He ran for state senate, I think it was, several years back, and he pointed out that there have been lawsuits filed, but they haven't gone very well because, of course, the judges in New Mexico are right on board with.
Right.
State power anyway. And so they were advising people to vote in November for conservative pro-freedom candidates, which I agree with entirely. But, that's not going to be enough. And I honestly, I don't know what the answer is. I'm sure you've heard of Daniel Horowitz and Conservative Review.
David Horowitz?
Actually, no, this is his son.
Oh, Daniel. Okay.
Yes, his son, Daniel Horowitz.
Okay.
David Horowitz is also excellent, but I've really been following Daniel Horowitz a lot lately, and he is an excellent resource for just fact-based information on the what we really should be doing about the coronavirus, especially what they've been doing in Europe and what they've realized. And he said that one thing we can do is get involved at the local level. If you can get your county to push back and say, no, we're not going to enforce these mandates, as has happened in places like Carlsbad, that's some hope right there. If people at the local level will resist these increasingly draconian edicts. And I believe there was a federal judge, I forget which state it was, but he was commenting on a lawsuit that someone had brought, and he said, these executive decrees are not laws. They do not have the force of law. They are royal decrees. And I think that was one of the things in the back of my head when I was writing all of this, because that really is what it's like. She just says, oh, well, it's a public health emergency. And as I point on the lyrics to the song, emergencies can last forever. Mm-hmm. And this one shows no sign of letting up. They just keep renewing it. And, that's not what an emergency is supposed to be. An emergency is when, enemy planes are dropping bombs overhead. An emergency is when there is actual spread of a deadly virus, not potential spread. You cannot legitimately declare an emergency because of something that might happen. But, Lujan Grisham and several other governors have nonetheless done just that.
Yeah. She also mentioned this article that she calls us the New Zealand of the United States. And there's an article just out this morning saying that in Auckland, they are extending the lockdown even further. And it sounds like a much more, from what I've heard, aggressive lockdown and a lot more restrictions even than we have here. I know in some places over in Australia, they were literally stationing government agents outside of major housing complexes and not letting people leave for more than like an hour a day. So just really, if you told me, in, I don't know, this time last year that people would have just rolled over for this kind of direct violation of their basic rights, I would have been pretty surprised because, I'm not a big fan of the governor, never have been. I think she's misguided on a number of public policies, but, we all tolerated her because she was elected, and we understood that there was a legislative process and all these protections in place, even if they were all often rubber stamps, at least they had processes. But now it seems like if she gets out of bed and it's a bad day, she just, yells at us and extends. It's like bad parenting or bad teacher we all had as children.
And that's another point I was trying to make in that video, is that she's treating us like children that need to be disciplined and admonished and punished if necessary. And I was listening to a course on the history of Russia recently, and that is how Russian aristocrats used to treat their serfs. They believed that they actually had a duty to be, like a father to these wayward children, and the children often needed to be disciplined, but you were also supposed to be a loving father, but also stern. Don't let him get out of line.
I see you in the airports. I see you on Facebook. I see you out there walking around without masks on. And now we've all been very good children recently, because even the signs, Big Brother, the big signs over the interstate, that they have turned around. They're much more positive. It's no longer are we at war with East Asia. We're definitely at war with West Asia. So things are turning around here. But we'll see what kind of freedoms we get reinstated. As we meet the guidelines, the gate posts, and all these things. You would think we would get some results. When my dog does a good job, she goes right in her little crate and everything. She looks at me and gives me that, hey, how about that treat kind of look? And I'm waiting for the treat, because we haven't gotten the treat yet. But this governor, I don't know. I don't see her changing her tune anytime soon.
No, I don't see that either. And you always see this with power. Once they get power, whether it's here in California or in Michigan or wherever, they like it. They don't want to release it, and they'll tell us that it's for our own good. And the more scared you can keep people, the more they'll just agree to it, because it's for everybody's good. This is a really bad virus. It's once in a century. No, they're always going to come up with some excuse to continue it, because I'll guarantee you this won't be the last one that comes down the pike. There's going to be another one, and just because of the it seems like the laws of probability almost guarantee that. And I predict that the next justification they're going to use, the next excuse, is going to be the potential for another, pandemic. There's a vaccine now. We finally got SARS-CoV-2 under control, but there could be another one. So we really better continue this. And the governor has already said that. I didn't see it, but about 45 minutes into one of her recent press conferences a couple of weeks ago, she said, I think these public health postures, like wearing masks and social distancing, are good ones to keep up forever, because, they prevent colds and they prevent the flu. And I mean, let's face it, by the same logic, the flu kills particularly elderly people as well. For elderly, it's not nearly as dangerous as COVID-19 is, but it does nonetheless cause deaths. So by the same logic, shouldn't we just, keep living like this? And that's what really concerns me, is that they're going to come up with more excuses, and unless the people have their hearts stirred up for liberty and rise up and say, no, we're not going to do this anymore, unless that becomes really widespread, they will try to perpetuate this.
Yeah, did you see the pictures from Wuhan, China, last week or so? They're having a massive pool party, a bunch of young people, and I'm not jealous. I'm not even here to hate on the folks in Wuhan or the Chinese, but they are doing this extremely unsocially distanced partying. There's no vaccine. There's nothing out there that we don't have aside from the herd immunity thing that they've been developing. And we're going to get another tune in here. Our DJ is going to play some more funky music here.
Excellent.
Ooh, you little nasty bug. Man, I really wish you would die. Corona can't give anyone a hug or cut a rug. Have to wash the counters with like Corona. People out of work, you're
in the background on that song? It sounds like there's a quacking noise.
No, if you see the video, I put red X's over a couple dancing and then
Oh,
kneeling
okay.
in church. That's
Good.
what that was. That's supposed to be a buzzer.
Thought I was hearing a waterfowl in there. Okay, so we were talking about the folks partying down in Wuhan, the outbreak zone of this particular virus. And
Although from the little I read, they haven't had any new cases in a couple of months, I think. And one of the interesting things that Daniel Horowitz has been pointing out, and he writes at conservativereview.com. In case any of our listeners do not know about that site, it's an excellent site that I highly recommend. He's pointing out that we're seeing the same pattern over and over again. There's a graph that somebody there put together of Sweden compared to New York State, and in particular Stockholm compared to New York City. And they show that in both cases, how it was initially was very different, but it tapers off when it hits about 15 to 20%. I believe it's seroprevalence of antibodies. And one theory on the reason for that is that people have T-cell cross immunities from other coronaviruses. And if you look at the data, you do see this played out, even on the Diamond Princess, which was, like the ideal
that was
case.
a cruise line.
Yes, it was a cruise
very
ship.
early on. Cruise
Very
ship,
early on.
yeah.
Nobody knew about the coronavirus yet, and so of course they had no countermeasures at all.
A lot of older folks on cruises.
Yeah, a lot of, even with a lot of older folks, heavily skewed toward the older population. Only about 20% actually ended up testing positive for COVID, and there was a recent case at Fort Benning, Georgia. I'm pretty sure it was. And this is interesting because, in my view, this proves that masks and social distancing are ineffective against this thing, because these were new recruits for the Army, I think it was, and they had rules in place. You will wear masks. You will social distance. You're not going to get higher compliance than that if you got a drill sergeant breathing down your neck if you step out of line.
Or
even for a
breathing
second.
socially distanced down your neck, right?
That's right. It is socially distanced, but yes.
Socially distanced breathing down your neck.
And they still had an outbreak, and it hit about 20%. And that seems to be what this virus does. If you look at Hawaii, you look at the Philippines, they have extremely strict mask wearing in place, and particularly the Philippines. You got the police threatening to shoot people if they violate these rules, and yet cases were starting to see a spike in cases again.
Yeah, it's very difficult. Early on, I think we're all in agreement that we didn't know very much about this whole situation, and there was a lot of learning to be done, and most people would give, whether it's the governor or other leaders, a lot of leeway in terms of making policies. Now, I will say that at the Rio Grande Foundation, our immediate frustration / concern was that she went with the method of naming some businesses essential and some businesses non-essential, and that really set her up, I think, initially for failure, because why should you be able to go buy, it was springtime, why should you be able to go buy plants and seeds and fertilizer and stuff at Lowe's or Home Depot and not be able to go to Jericho Nursery or one of the other local nurseries?
Exactly.
That just made zero sense whatsoever. And we always thought, look, come up with some guidelines. They may not wind up being absolutely essential, like this whole social distance and mask thing. I think it's definitely open to question how effective they are, the self-quarantining issue. CDC just came out over the weekend, I believe, and said that when you travel from state to state, they're not calling for quarantines anymore. We now have a 14-day quarantine in place, and the Rio Grande Foundation has a lot of speakers. It's very difficult to get people to come here, not because they think they're going to have to quarantine, but because they don't want to deal with the hassle and feel like they're some kind of scofflaw when they're not obeying the rules and regulations handed down by the governor.
Well, that's true. Of course, again, it's highly debatable whether those actually do have the force of law, but that's.
Well, the courts, as you said, have been very willing to give the governor her policies, and it's a thin reed indeed to have to rely on a bunch of judges, especially New Mexico judges, but any judge. It's always problematic. You'd wish that these politicians would understand the impact on average people, the impact on the economy, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really amazing what's happened in the last, I guess it's 6 months now. I guess that after.
Yeah, I think so. You talk about that. That reminds me of something that a principle that's been on my mind a lot lately. It's as if one of the very frustrating things about this to me is that it's like the nervous Nelly helicopter parents have taken over everything.
Yeah.
People who want to close schools down, in Washington, D.C., if there's the slightest bit of snow on the roads because there's a tiny chance that a school bus might have an accident. Oh, no, close down the schools. Never let your kids climb trees. Don't let your kids ride a tricycle without a helmet. And because of an obsessive focus on one particular kind of risk that is tiny, and in trying to avoid that risk, you do all kinds of other damage.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of just irrational risk avoidance that we're seeing. And the groundwork's been laid for that for a long time, because you had a generation of helicopter parents, who never let their kids get hurt, never let their kids experience failure, never let their kids learn from the rough and tumbles of life, which is how, it's supposed to be. And then something like this comes along and people think, oh my gosh, somebody might die of COVID. Quick, shut everything down.
Yeah.
And they don't think about the damage that they're doing in other ways, whether it's from the suicide rates being, quadruple, or who knows how much higher than they actually are. It depends on where you go, but they are definitely much, much higher than normal. Whether you talk about the damage, the harm that we're doing to kids by, keeping them out of school, not allowing them to socialize. There was a report out of the UK just recently that said, look, kids are more in danger from the flu than they are from COVID-19. So the risk to the kids themselves is tiny, but the known damage of keeping them out of school vastly outweighs that. And yet, so they're opening up the schools in the UK. What are we doing here in New Mexico? We're closing them through January and probably for the rest of the year.
Not only that, of course, but first and foremost, there's been a lot of protests. We're not going to go into in-depth detail about it, and whether those were right, wrong, or somewhere in between. A lot of the young people were involved with them, and some of this SJW, social justice warrior culture, people taking offense at very trivial things. Now, obviously, we're not talking about George Floyd, but maybe we're talking about Frederick Douglass and these statues being toppled of people who should never even be considered, and some of the helicopter parenting and things that have gone on in past generations, and wondering why today's young people act the way they do sometimes. And even in seeing younger people that I know, it's surprising given the numbers and the relative likelihood of younger people to fall prey to this virus and actually being, dealt a health problem or death relative to older people. It's astonishing how many young people are really hyper concerned about the whole situation.
Oh, the public perception is a serious, serious problem. I think I was listening to a Daniel Horowitz podcast this morning, and he said that there was a survey done, and a lot of Americans interviewed believe that 9 million people have died from COVID-19.
Wow.
They think 9 million people have died. And what is the actual death toll? 170,000, I think it is. I believe about half of which has occurred in nursing homes because of insane policies like Cuomo in New York.
He's a hero, though. The Democrats, he's writing a book about how great he did.
Such great things. Yeah, ordering nursing homes to take back people infected with COVID-19. That was just appalling. And yeah, he's just doing a victory dance.
It's like
football.
Both of my daughters are very interested in the Titanic, and we showed them the movie minus two particular scenes, but
I can imagine.
It'd be kind of like having the captain of the Titanic, had he survived, come out and talk about what a great job as a ship captain he did. That's the equivalent of having Cuomo, a New York governor, talk about what a great job he did under COVID-19.
Well, yeah, I like that, but again, it's the public perception. There was another survey that they overstated the risk to those Americans. According to this survey, believe that people age 50 and under, I think it was, account for something like half of coronavirus deaths. That overstates it by, I can't remember, I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but it overstates it by a factor of something like 20, if not 50. And these public perceptions, fueled by the media, fueled by people like our governor who are all too willing to make people scared in order to stay in power, I feel like one of the things we need to do is get the truth out there, combat these rampant misperceptions. And it's very easy to do. I mean, you can point to the CDC's own data about this, and they can't say, oh, well, that's just some fake data from some crazy right-wing website. Oh, no, this is the CDC. They're the ones who are saying that, for instance, for kids 18 and under, the flu is more dangerous than COVID-19. That is according to the CDC.
All right. Well, thank you, John, for your time, your very well-informed views on the virus itself. Last, before we take us out, Wally takes us out with another one of your songs. If people want to book you for a birthday party, do whatever, things they want, I guess we have to wait for the governor to give us some freedom on some of these things, but we won't hold it against you if you book them for a birthday party. John, how do people get in touch with you?
A good way is to leave a comment on one of my YouTube channels or on my Facebook page. And again, if you look for Math Poet 87, MathPoet 87 on YouTube or on Facebook, Math Poet 87's parody music videos, you should be able to find me.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today, and
sure
take us
appreciate it,
home,
Paul.
Mr. Producer.
Well, there's a worldwide panic that's all across the planet when you rule by the CDC. But with the kids all snuffed like a wolf pack attack, you gotta go and get some groceries. We had a real big hiccup with the grocery pickup. Didn't have a lot of stuff that we missed. So my wife said, honey, better go and spend your money. And it started with a little list like this.